guys, I'm Steve Freeman, and welcome back to the Steve Freeman Podcast. Today, we are going to talk about something very important, and I almost venture to say that if you never listen to another one of my podcasts, if you never watch another one of my videos or read one of my blogs, today is the one to watch. We are going to talk about the three pillars and the three keys to success in the music industry. We're going to talk about it in depth. I don't know how long this episode's going to be. It might end up being a longer episode, but like I said, if you never listen to another podcast or watch another video, today's the one to listen to. I'm going to get as real as I possibly can with you guys and talk some truth today, which I always try to do. But I feel like today we really need to drill down, and I'll tell you why in just a few minutes. The three keys to success in the music business. That's the topic of today's Steve Freeman Podcast. Before we get started, guys, if you are listening to the podcast, I appreciate it. You can get the podcast everywhere you get your favorite podcast. That's radio.com, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher. But if you're listening where pretty much everybody else listens, on Apple Podcasts, do me a favor and subscribe to the podcast and give us that coveted 5-star review. And if you're really getting something out of the podcast, please take just a couple of seconds and jot down a review so that other people can see that it's actually being helpful to you. If you're watching the video version on YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure that you're following the new YouTube notification policies and you are hitting that bell icon and selecting to be notified every time and anytime I upload new content to the YouTube channel. If you're not following me across social media, I would absolutely love to have you be a part of our social media family. It's at The Steve Freeman on all platforms, but I'm pretty much most active on Instagram. So I hope to catch you over there, and I hope you're following me. If you do, send me a DM. Let me know that you followed and you listen to the podcast, and I will be sure to follow you back. Would love to have you part of that family. Also, if you would like to join the Revolution, which is my weekly newsletter, tips, tricks, advice, a lot of personal stuff from me about the music business in general, and sometimes just about stuff that's going on in life. We can all help and talk to each other there as well. You can sign up for free for the Revolution at my website, thestevefreeman.com, or at the brand new The Steve Freeman Podcast.com. All right, guys, jumping right into today's episode, and that is the three keys to success in the music business. Now, I guess we started the YouTube channel, which is where all of this started, a little over a year ago. Now, I've been developing and working with artists for the better part of 20 years, but taking this online to YouTube and the podcast and trying to educate new, emerging, independent, and unsigned artists in a broader format beyond just one-on-one with our clients really started over a year ago. What never ceases to amaze me is that regardless of the amount of content that I put out there, I still get the same questions. And I'm almost convinced that, like I said, let me go back. I'm going to be truthful with you today. I'm going to say some things that might be hard for you to hear, but it is going to be truthful. It's going to be on point. And I'm not saying the things today to discourage you, but rather to help you in your journey. But I get a lot of the same questions. And I was sitting last night and I was thinking, why do I keep getting the same questions? Because either you're hearing my content, but you're not listening to it, or it boils down to you have not yet mastered or put in alignment the three pillars or keys to success of the music business. And so that's what I want to talk about today. There are only three. Guys, there are a lot of people putting a lot of content out there. There's people out there trying to sell you a music business blueprint. Guys, there is no blueprint to success in the music business. There's no blueprint to success to anything. Because if you take that word on face value, a blueprint is a guide, right? It's almost a step-by-step guide that if you do this, and this, you're going to get this result. Well, that doesn't work in the music business. Maybe if you're in construction and you build buildings or houses for a living and you have that trade knowledge and you have that skill, if you follow a blueprint, then you're going to end up with a building or a house. But it doesn't work that way in the music business. So I get frustrated when I see people come to me and they start talking about this music business blueprint. Guys, there is no blueprint. There is no blueprint to success in the music business, and I don't want to see you waste your time. But there are 3 pillars, 3 fundamentals, and 3 keys to success in the music business. Only 3. They are direction, creation, and financial availability. That's it. We're going to talk about those 3 things in detail today because I think I figured out why I keep getting the same questions over and over and over and over again. In a podcast and a video a few weeks ago, I talked about your music business career being like a wheel, and there are spokes in that wheel, and that if any one of those spokes in the wheel is broken, missing, or not there, or damaged, the wheel is going to collapse. Well, you could say, and there's a lot of people out there saying that there are many different spokes in this wheel. That may be true to some extent, some context, but really it comes down to these 3 fundamentals, pillars, and keys that make up the spokes of that wheel. Let's talk about the first one, direction. It is so important that you know where you're going, that you have identified your end destination very clear. I'm not talking about success being your end destination or opening for this huge artist or being the headliner at that artist or selling 1 million copies or getting 50 million streams or having a huge hit single like Old Town Road. That's not what I'm talking about when I'm talking about direction and knowing where you're going. I'm talking about knowing who you are. Who are you as an artist? What is your identity? What's your audience? Who's your audience? Where do they live? What do they do? What are their extracurricular activities? Why do you think they will like you? All of these things go into determining your direction. It is so important to have such an identity of who you are as an artist, because if you don't know who you are, how in the world do you expect anybody else to know who you are? How do you expect them to identify with you if you can't identify yourself? I have been amazed at times when I'm working with an artist and I ask them, who are you? And I get well, I'm so-and-so from here and I went to school here, or that's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying, who are you? Who are you as an artist? What do you stand for? What's your style? What is your message? And how do you plan to communicate that message effectively, but even more importantly than that, differently than everybody else? How are you unique? Don't tell me how you're like all these other people. Tell me how you're not like all of these other people. There's no shortage of talent out in the marketplace right now. So it's not like I have to look very far to find music that I like or artists that I want to support. What about you makes me want to take a division of some of my time or money and invest in you by buying your music or watching your video or interacting with you or watching you on Facebook Live or buying a ticket or buying a t-shirt? How do you plan to attract me to you above all the other choices out there? That is your direction. What is your direction? I find most oftentimes that maybe this is one of the spokes in the wheel that is causing your wheel and your tire to go flat and why some of you are constantly on the side of the road. You have to know who you are and where you're going and how you're going to get there. Being able to identify yourself, again, let's say it again. It is so important. If you can't define yourself, it's going to be impossible for anybody else to. So direction is very important, and it's a key element, factor, pillar of your success in your music business career. The second is creation. Now, this is where we get to talking physically about the music you're writing, the music you're making, your production, and all of that. This is the creation process. It is the second key and pillar of success in the music business. Now, you've all heard me talk many times before about how the music doesn't matter so much anymore. And it doesn't unless you have a very clear destination. If you have identified yourself as an artist and you've completed step number one and you have key number one firmly well within hand, then the music that you create almost becomes the vehicle to that destination and to who you are as a unique artist. So then the music very much does matter. What are you creating? How are you creating it? Who are you creating it with? Are you putting out the absolute best product that it can be, or are you putting out product that is the best that you can afford, which we'll get into in a minute? There is no excuse to put out anything less than the best. If you can't, then you're missing one of the keys. And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes as well. But your creation needs to match your identity. It needs to match your destination. And it needs to be as unique as you are as an artist. Again, let's talk about your creation. Let's talk about your music. What is different about your music than anybody else, any other artist, any other song I can stream by, or any other video that I can watch? What about your creation is unique? It is so crowded out there in the music business right now. I've said it. It is extremely crowded. It's probably overcrowded, but that's because there's never been a better time in our history to be an independent artist, to be an unsigned artist, to be out there on your own. But just because you're out there on your own and you're independent or you're unsigned and you don't have that checkbook from a major label, that doesn't give you the excuse to not have all three of these keys. It certainly doesn't give you the excuse for your creation. One of the fundamental and most important keys to your success, it doesn't give you the right to let your creation be any lesser than. I hear it all the time from independent artists that, and this is serious, guys. This blows me away sometimes when I hear it, but I have literally had multiples of artists tell me this, that when they identify themselves as an independent or unsigned artist, that the expectation level of the end user, the consumer, the listener, the fan is less than. It doesn't have to be quite as good because they don't expect it to be as good. They know I don't have a major label promoting me and marketing me and getting my music on all these playlists, so they don't expect my music to be as good as major artists. Number one, I think that's wrong. I think if you're dealing with fans that honestly believe that way, you have missed your direction. You have missed the first key pillar to success in the music industry. You have misidentified your core fans, your core audience, and the people who would be interested in you as an artist. If you think your fans give you a pass because, and it gives you the right to give them a lesser product because you're independent or unsigned, you have completely missed your direction, which may be your problem. Your creation has to be right, but more so than right, it has to match your destination. I see so many of you out there that have clearly defined your destination, but your music is completely heading in the wrong and opposite direction. And then it's easy for me to sit back and go, well, I know why this isn't working. It's very clear to me. It's very easy to me to understand why you're broken down on the side of the road. So guys, the second key fundamental pillar of success in the music business is your creation. If you have your direction set properly, then yes, the music does matter. It's got to be the right music for your audience. Not maybe globally. It's not for everybody. And I'm not even talking about micro niching here, which seems to be a new term that's going around the music business. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about making sure that your music fits your audience. Not that your music fits Keith Urban's audience, or that your music fits Justin Bieber's audience or Ariana Grande's audience. I'm talking about, does your music fit your audience? And you're saying, well, Steve, I don't have an audience yet. Listen to me very carefully. It is easier for you to find an audience of your own than it is to try to go and get an audience of another artist to come to you and like your music. That is absolutely the opposite of what everybody out there is telling you. That is the opposite of what these people and the architects of the music business blueprint are telling you, because they're telling you about the association strategy, that you want to go out and poach fans from this artist and poach fans from this artist. I often liken it to being an opening artist on a tour or an opening artist for a show. Unless the show you're opening for that artist is in your hometown, nobody is showing up to those shows to see the opening act. Most of the time, they schedule those opening acts an hour and a half to 2 hours before the main artist even goes on stage, and there's nobody even in the arena. There's nobody in the venue. Very few. Maybe a few people have shown up early, maybe to get to the merch table of the headliner. They're there to see the headliner. They're going to walk away talking about the headliner because that's what got them to buy the ticket. That's what I'm talking about, guys. This association marketing, it doesn't work. Now, will it help your numbers on social media? Sure. But is it going to help the bottom line? Is it going to help you sell music, get streams if that's what you're into, sell concert tickets, or sell merch? And guys, that's what we're talking about. We focus so much on the numbers and the perception of success. I have said it 100 times, and it's never more true than it is right now. I honestly believe artists are more interested in the perception of success than actually being successful. They want people to perceive them as successful more than they want to actually be successful. Because sometimes real success doesn't come with the fame. It doesn't come with the glory. Sometimes you're the only one that sees it, or the people that are closest to you are the only one that sees it. But in the day and time and age that we live in right now, it doesn't matter about that. It's what do we look like to the rest of everybody else? How does everybody else perceive us? Do they think we're doing good? Do they look at us and are they jealous? And we live in that sort of society to where we are measuring each other's true success by their perception. And guys, to bring it back, your creation can do all of that for you. Your creation can create perception, but it's in the reality that turns into financial gains, which is point number 3. This is where it falls apart for 99% of the artists that I've worked with, that I talk to. It never fails. Look, we're going to get real when we talk about this. Having access to funds and being able to finance your career in the music industry is the third and probably the most important key fundamental to your success in the music business. I've said this in podcasts and videos before. There is no amount of talent that will overcome your lack of financial availability and lack of funds. When we talk about these 3 keys, If you don't have all three of these, if you don't have the right direction, you don't have the right creation, and you don't have the financial wherewithal, you are not going to succeed in this business. They all three have to be working in your favor at the same time. The thing that I find more often than not that is the difference between failure and success with people in the music industry is they have one or two of these things at one given time, at any given one time. They don't ever have all three of these things together at the same time. They may have the direction. They may think, I know exactly who I am. I know exactly who my audience is, and this is who my music's for, and this is where I'm going. They may have that locked down, but they don't have the creation. They don't have the right music. They're not working with the right producer. They're not on message. Their music has no point, or it sounds just like a sea of other artists out there, and then you don't really stand apart. It's not going to work. I run into it all the time where artists have the creation and they have the financial wherewithal, but they don't have the direction. They have no idea who they are. They're just running around throwing endless amounts of money into the system. There are several artists like that in Nashville right now who are no further along now than they were 5 years ago. It's just their parents have money, so they keep throwing money into the system. Now they've got financial wherewithal, they've got the financial aspect and the financial key and pillar down, but they don't have the right creation and they don't have the direction. It can come in any different form of those three that you want to talk about. But if you want to be successful, the fact of the matter is you have to have all three. I watch YouTube videos. I listen to other podcasts where people talk about if the direction is right and the creation is right, but you don't have finances, that's not going to hold you back. That is wrong. It is 100% wrong. That to me is preying on your optimism and your hope and your dreams. It's wrong. In the way that the music business is set up today, in the way that it works, if you do not have the financial wherewithal and you don't have the money to get your direction and your creation out to the public, you are going nowhere. Your tire is going to be flat and it's going to be collapsed and you're going to be on the side of the road. If you've got the direction but don't have the creation or the finances, you're going to be on the side of the road. If you have the direction but don't have the creation and the finances, you're going to be on the side of the road. If you do not have direction, creation, and finances working all at the same time, you're going to fail. You can look at me, you can say, Steve, man, that's harsh. I mean, basically what you're saying is talent doesn't matter. I'm saying talent without the financial backing to shine a light on your talent in a very crowded sea of other fish out there. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. That's hard to hear, but here's how I want to talk to you about fixing it. This is where I see almost every artist go wrong. I don't even see that often that there are a lot of artists that can't identify which key pillar they're missing. Now, this is key. This is very important. If you aren't having the success you want as an artist in the music business or as a songwriter or as a publisher or as a producer or as an engineer, you are missing one of these three keys. You're missing one of them, at least one of them. Let's put it that way. You're missing at least one. Instead of trying to find other avenues and teams to help and all of these other things and options that people are readily and available to sell you out there, stop and perform the one function that is the most important thing that you can do as an artist. That is to identify which key or keys you're missing. If you don't know that, you're just wandering around in the desert. We've identified what the keys are. Again, direction, creation, and finances. Those are the three. If you aren't having the kind of success that you want in your career right now, no matter what the hell it is that you're doing, you're missing one of these keys. Your job now is to stop focusing on the direction, focusing on the creation, or focusing on the finances and identify your problem. What if your creation's right and you don't have the finances. I'll tell you what, let's say this. Let's say your direction is right and your creation is right, but you don't have the finances. How many of you out there are thinking if you're missing the financial key that the answer lies that you haven't created the right product? Be honest with yourself. If you have the direction and the creation, but you don't have the finances, how many of you artists out there or songwriters or whoever are thinking that you don't have the finances because you haven't gotten the creation right? So you focus 100% of your time and attention on creation when that's not your problem. Your problem is the third key. Your problem is the lack of money and the lack of financing. You can't overcome the lack of financing with fixing the direction or the creation. How many of you out there have the financial wherewithal to give it a good run at an independent artist career or an unsigned artist career, or have the money to be that successful independent artist so that the ultimate goal may be to get signed to a major label? But we've talked about that. Major labels want on moving trains, so you got to get that train going. How many of you have the money to do that? And you're in the studio, you're creating, you're making music videos, you're doing all of that, but maybe direction is a problem. And instead of identifying that and going, okay, we've got the money, we've got the product, but maybe the product's wrong. Maybe the destination is the issue, but instead of doing that, you keep going back to money and throwing more money into the wrong creation. So many of you are not successful and are not succeeding right now because you either don't have one of these keys or you're misidentifying what it is that you've gotten wrong. You think it's a money problem when it's a creation problem. You think it's a creation problem when you actually have a direction problem. You think that you have a direction problem when you have a money problem. To figure out the riddle and the answer to this question and this problem requires you to be 100% honest with yourself in identifying which one of these keys are not in your possession. Direction, creation, finances. I got to be honest with you. Most of the artists I meet with, they honestly inside believe that the key they're missing is finances, when the key they're missing may be direction or creation. Because it's easy to blame not having money. We hear that all the time. Well, I don't have the money for that. I don't have the money to go in the studio. I don't have the money to produce a right album. Well, then if you don't have the money to do that, then money is your problem. Creation isn't the problem. Direction isn't the problem. So instead of writing more songs and posting more on Instagram or Facebook, then you need to devote 100% of your efforts into fixing the problem you have, which is finances. If you have the finances and you have the creation and it's not going anywhere, stop thinking that the answer is to create more. It's to create something different, because you're obviously not hitting your core audience. So the answer to the problem is direction. Let's say that you know exactly who you are, you know exactly who your audience is, and you've got the money to make the creation, make the music, make the album, make the EP, make the videos, do all of the marketing. You've got the finances, but it doesn't seem to be striking a chord with anybody. You've got the direction, you've got the finances, then creation is your problem. You may have identified that core audience and who you think your audience is, but your creation that you're making and the music that you're making isn't hitting them. It's not striking a chord with them. So maybe you have a creation problem. You have a marketing problem. You have an image problem. That's all in the creation key. But guys, the one thing that I do know for sure is that it takes having all three of these simultaneously to have success in the music business. I know there are a lot of people out there, and it's frustrating. There are a lot of people out there telling you that as long as you've got one of these, you're good to go. Or as long as you've got two of these, you're good to go. Guys, I'm telling you, it's just not right. Most of the artists all of the artists that I work with, either in an artist development capacity or a producer, they are always missing one of these key elements. Because let me tell you, it's hard. It's hard to have all three of these things at the same time. But if you don't, maybe that's where you start. If you can be honest with yourself and you can identify and you can go, okay, I've got the direction, I've got the creation, but I don't have the finances. Or I've got the creation, I've got the finances, but I don't have the direction. Maybe you've got the creation and direction, but you don't have the finances, or any combination. Once you identify which key you're missing, that's when you can start to fix it. And the only way that you can correct it and you can fix it is when you do identify which key it is that you're missing, that you shift all of your focus into obtaining that key. It's like I said earlier, if you have a financial problem, there's no amount or different direction or creation that you're going to come up with that's going to overcome for the lack of having the money that it takes to be successful in this business. Now, I do want to talk about that for just a second, because I think the financial end of this is sometimes so daunting to a lot of you. There's a lot of misconceptions out there about how much money it takes to be successful in this business. I will tell you that the less direction and the less creation that you have, the more money it's going to take. The less creation that you have, definitely the more money it's going to take. Mainly because sometimes it's not about the amount of money. Sometimes it's about just being there and being consistent and being persistent and being willing to sacrifice. And the biggest sacrifice sometimes is time. It's the one thing we all want to speed up. It's the one thing we don't think that we have enough of, but it is the one thing that is required to be successful in this business. There are no overnight successes. If they are, they're 1 in a billion. They don't come along very often. And to think that you're going to be the 1 in a billion, well, you're in for a very sad existence thinking that you're going to be the one. Sometimes having access and having the money that it takes to be successful in this business just comes down to outlasting everybody else. It doesn't mean that you've got to hire a producer. Some of these producers, I swear to God, charging $7,500 a song. That's not what you're missing. That's not what I'm talking about. Sometimes just being able to be persistent and consistent and put a 5-year plan instead of a 12-month plan into place, that all comes down to finances. How long can you afford to play the game? Those of you that can stay around in the game longer have a better chance of winning. That's just facts. So on the subject of finances, don't let that get you down, guys. There are affordable ways to do things. I'm not saying that it takes a lot of money, but I am saying that you are going to have to invest in your journey. You're going to have to invest in your career. You're going to have to invest in your direction. You're going to have to invest in your creation, in you as an artist. Maybe you don't have that right now, and if you don't, that's where you need to start. Because honestly, it's probably the most important. People that have financial resources can change direction and creation all they want until they find the right direction and the right creation. But what I want you to take away from this, and like I said at the beginning, the reason that I wanted to talk about this was because I seem to get the same questions over and over and over again. I don't mind answering them. Maybe when I get one, it's somebody that's new to me, new to my business, new to the podcast, or new to my videos. And if they are, they're hearing and learning a lot of this stuff for the first time. but you would be surprised at the number of people who have been involved with me for a long time continuing to ask the same questions. I want to definitively put an answer out there right now. The answer to your question, why am I not this? Why am I not that? Why am I not as far along as this artist or this artist? Why is my music not on this playlist when this artist is? The answer, the entire answer of why am I not or why can't I is answered in a very simple statement. There are 3 key fundamentals and pillars to success in the music business. They are direction, creation, and available funds, availability of financing to be able to invest in your career. If you're missing any of the 3, it doesn't matter what 2 you have or what 1 you have. You're going to be broken down on the side of the road, because just like spokes in a wheel, if there's 1 missing, it's going flat. You have to have all 3 working together like a fine honed machine, turning together at the same time. If you've got 1, you're going flat. If you've got 2, you're better, but you may last a little bit longer, but your destination is on the side of the road, broken down, calling for AAA. The music business, AAA. You have to have all 3, guys. Direction, creation, and the ability to invest financially in your career. Those are the 3 key fundamentals and pillars and really answers to success in the music business. If you're not having the career that you want to have, if you're not having the success that you want to have, stop everything you're doing and identify which one of these keys is not on your key ring. Because finding out, identifying which key you're missing could be the entire difference between where you are and where you want to go. Stop everything you're doing and go get the key that fits the lock that opens the door. Guys, thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Steve Freeman Podcast. Like I said, I know some of the things I said in today's podcast are hard to hear, and if you never listen to another podcast, you never listen to another word I say, I hope that you listen today. Identifying where you are going wrong and what you don't have and what that one missing ingredient is the most important, and it is the determining factor of your success. But like I said, some of it was hard to hear. Some of it's hard to say. I don't want to disappoint any of you guys, but I've always told you I will tell you the truth no matter how hard it is to hear. And there was a lot of truth bombs in today's podcast. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, guys, please do me a favor and subscribe to the podcast so that it's automatically downloaded to your playlist, and it'll send you a little notification every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday when the podcast goes live. If you're enjoying the video version of the podcast, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the bell icon so that you're notified when I upload new content. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, feel free in the comments section below to tell me where you're at in your career. Tell me if you've identified which element you're missing and what you plan to do to fix it. If you're not following me on social media, I'd love to have you a part of the social media family. It's at The Steve Freeman on all social media platforms. I'm most active on Instagram, so that's where I converse and go back with a lot of you. So if you're not following me, it's at The Steve Freeman. If you want to go deeper, dive a little deeper with me in tips, tricks, advice, you can join my weekly newsletter, The Revolution. It's absolutely free. You can sign up at my website, thestevefreeman.com or thestevefreemanpodcast.com. Guys, as always, keep being creative. Keep pressing the boundaries. And there's nothing wrong with being independent. See you in the next one.